The indifference and the brutality of violence and death. This is the lesson learned anew with each Malazan book I read. If you saw my video from this weekend, I was about 300 pages into TOLL the Hounds, the 8th book in Malazan Book of the Fallen. It's Wednesday night now, and I just passed like the 850 page mark, so I'm pretty deep into the book at this point. Now it is a 1,300 page book, so still have a while to go. But I just wanted to talk about this briefly. It's going to be a pretty short video. Every Malazan book that I read, I'm reading it with this sort of anticipation and trepidation, because I know at some point some shoe is going to drop or some hammer is going to drop and something brutal is going to happen. And so far, TOLL the Hounds is no exception. If you've read this book, chapter 11, that was a brutal gut punch of a chapter. And chapter 12, the sort of aftermath of that event, just left that sort of feeling linger the way it's written, and again, deliberately so. As I get deeper into this series, and the end is getting closer and closer, as eager as I am to finish, I realize more and more that how much I'm going to miss this story world. One of the most surprising things about this read so far is just how attached I've become to this sort of story world, the whole world that Malazan takes place in, and also in particular to Steven Erikson's writing style. His writing style, as far as fantasy goes, is quite different from Robert Jordan, from like George R.R. Martin. It's very different. It's got its own sort of meter and flow to it. And there's a lot of dialogue, and a lot of it is, I'm trying to think of how to describe it. There's a lot of like back and forth. It's written in a way where characters feel like they really do know each other and have known each other for years and have been through horrific things and triumphant things together. And there's a comfortableness in their dialogue with each other that rings true. It sounds true the way they speak. And there's a good sense of humor as well, kind of woven into the dialogue that makes it very entertaining. One of the things that has me kind of intrigued and a bit worried is this particular like brutal gut punch scene happens somewhere not even around the midpoint of the book. So it has me wondering and worried for what in the hell is the finale of this book even going to be. So at this point, like 850 or so pages in, we're beginning to see more of the sort of overall picture. We're not getting details of what's in play in Darujhistan yet, but we're beginning to have more pieces, or at least more players involved, being revealed. And there's some, again, these sort of weird one-off things that don't seem to be connected to the main plot, but are connected in the overall arcing story. And I'm really curious as to where those threads are going to kind of weave themselves to. So what I will say is this, to kind of wrap up again, this really short sort of midweek check-in video is, I'm worried. I'm worried about my Bridgeburners. I'm probably as worried as I should have already been. More worried than I was at the start of this novel. And that's on me for getting lulled into submission in some ways with some of these Bridgeburners attempting retirement. I'll just say that and I'll leave it at that, because I don't want to have any kind of spoilers for anyone who's interested in reading the Malazan series. But I will say again, I am on book 8 of 10. I'm 854 pages into like a 1,294 page book. And this story still intrigues me and still fascinates me. And as someone who's such a big fan of Kruppa as a sort of secondary character, to have Kruppa sort of semi-narrating like bits and pieces throughout this story, because this is a new thing that the author Erikson is doing in this particular novel. As each chapter or opens up, and sometimes subsections of within the chapter, we get this sort of narrative that you can tell is from Kruppa's point of view. That's just kind of setting the scene or hinting at the scene to come. And then we flow into the actual, POV or whatever character we're following for a little bit. But I'm really enjoying sort of Kruppa's omnipotent sort of like presence or like interjections, if you will. And you can tell it's Kruppa, even though it's not explicitly stated most of the times. You can tell it's Kruppa because of the speaking mannerisms, because Kruppa has a very distinct way of talking, which I know really annoys a lot of people. But for me, like I've mentioned before, Kruppa is one of my favorite characters in this story. Ever since the weekly update video I posted, which you can find up here, I've been reading this story every pretty much free time I have. It's really pulling me in. And again, as soon as I'm done editing this and uploading it and posting it, I'm going to be back into the book and continuing on. I will see you this weekend in my next weekly update video.